Well, a very warm welcome to episode 18 of My Body the Guitar with Karla Linn Merrifield. Great to see you, Karla. Welcome.
Oh, good to see you, Paul, and all you good people out there in YouTube land.
So this week, Karla, episode 18. I've been waiting 18 episodes for this. This is fantastic news.
Yeah, episode 18, Mark Knopfler.
Shall we? Do you just want to give us some background into your relationship with Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler, Karla?
Yes. The poem itself is called, excuse me, the metric I use is Knopfler's 61 Strat. And that's the instrument that he played for the recording of probably their most widely known song, Dire Straits' most widely known song, Sultans of Swing. And the poem itself is, it's really kind of a memoir poem, more about my life in a way than Mark Knopfler's genius. But it is a tribute to him because it tells the story of how a single song can become a theme song for someone's life. And we've something like this before, how songs get embedded into the fabric of our lives. And this one sure did. And I do quote Sultans of Swing throughout the poem, which it happens to be 6 stanzas of 7 lines each, mapping out in a way, 6 decades in my life that he has been a part of it through that particular song. I don't know, let's read it, okay?
Absolutely.
Can I read it?
Thank you. Please do, Karla. Thank you. I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay. Okay. Use is Knopfler's 61 Strat. In 1978, I spent a stoned weekend at SUNY Fredonia, I think, when I first heard it. Returned 4 years on for some eager younger stuff. A crowd of young boys, they're fooling around in the corner. In 1987, I spent a stoned weekend on Vermont Street, I guess, when I heard it again. Unreturned divorcee material for any kind of stuff. A band is blowing Dixie double 4 time. In 1999, I spent a stoned weekend on the Colorado River. Really? When a doryman played it, overturned in sand under stars for his impossible stuff. You feel all right when you hear that music sing. It turned on wife howling for more man stuff. He doesn't want to make it sing or cry. 2017, I spent a stoned weekend in Hollybrook House, I believe, when I needed it again. Unturned widow pillowing toward the hollowed stuff. Thank you, good night. Now it's time to go home. 2020, I spent a stoned weekend in the time of coronavirus. I know. When I summon it again, upturned solo in condo land. No way, no how, no stuff. A shiver in the dark, raining in the park.
Masterful, that, Karla. Absolutely stunning. I love the way you've weaved the Sultans of Swing into that. And where do we start? First thing is the title. I love the title. Can you just talk about the title?
Well, it was funny. The title actually came. There was when I wrote this. When was this? It must have been late last fall, maybe October of 2020. Really deep into coronavirus time. Anyway, and our past president, who shall remain unnamed, I saw a clip on News Clip, and he was rambling on about, and the metric I use is, and I was like, what's he talking about? So, but I thought it made me stop to think about the phrase, how do we measure our life? What are the metrics of our life? And for me, the metric for, what I use to measure my life, as the poem demonstrates, is Mark Knopfler's genius, particularly applied to the 61 Strat. The famous, red body, white faceplate Stratocaster that he used in performing Sultans of Swing. So that, it became, it's the metric of my life. And then the poem then proves that, as I draw readers through the decades that ensued from when that song first was published in May 1978. And all of a sudden, I've got a theme song that seems to have followed me around through my life. It's on my playlist. It's in my CD collection, probably on 3 different Dire Straits CDs, and it's one I just return to all the time. And it's such a classic and instrumental, no pun intended, song that has framed the soundtrack of my life.
I totally. It's incredible, Karla. That Sultans of Swing as a document of a night out in Deptford in London. As we know, he was in a bar watching a band. And it's such an unassuming piece of genius for me, because it contains some of the most incredible guitar playing ever, I think, in the history of the guitar. It's so unassuming. I'll just go to it a second now. This is this bit. Hope we need to hear that. Okay, so this kind of guitar keeps going off. And not all this time. It's really interesting how he kind of weaves all that brilliance into such a great song as Sultans of Swing. Very unassuming, but really almost like an anti-hero, I think, Mark Knopfler. He's kind of not, he's not a guy to do a duck walk or play with his teeth and stuff like that, but in terms of just sitting down and moving people, it's fantastic, brilliant. And also the fact that he was a journalist, I think, has a massive influence on his lyrics. And I love the way that you've kind of, in my opinion, kind of brought in his influence of very conversational text into the song. So what gave you the idea to kind of paraphrase Sultans of Swing at the end of each stanza?
Because I had to tie it. I had to tie it back to the song. And I had to do that repeatedly because it was there. That song was in my head, in my ear, and then of course, coming across, on a phonograph, on a radio station in those early days. And then of course, as time passed and we get CDs, and then we get, gizmos like Alexa, and of course, YouTube, where we are now. It's always been there. And it was, critical that song, be integrated. And I give, credit to him that he tells this marvelous story that it's so rich. The lyrics are so rich, and you can see the journalist in him come out, because his, the details that he uses. I mean, you enter that pub or little tavern, you enter that with the song, and he takes you through. You meet all the band members who are performing, and what's going on with the scene until the show is over and the musicians are done with their gig. It appears at the end of every single stanza. I've cherry picked pieces of the lyrics that apply to that particular stanza. So they're not in order, that they appear in the lyric sheet in the songbook, but they're there, as that foundational. It ends every stanza. Every stanza rests on Mark Knopfler and his creativity, both on the guitar and in the lyrics of the tune.
It's the time frame that you've started in 1978, and we get down to 2020. That's an incredible that's an incredible amount of time, isn't it? I mean, how that song has kind of grown with everyone who's heard it. I think really, when was the first time that you heard the song, Karla?
Well, I was there. I was on this college campus visiting a fella, and he must have had it on his turntable. I just vividly remember it. I could probably pull my journal off the shelf from that age. In fact, I did go back to several of my journals to peg some details of that, where I'd written an entry about a certain piece of my life, whether it was, being on a college campus or going through a divorce, being on the Colorado River, and one of the dorymen, the guys rowing the boat, the little dories down the river, had his guitar, and we were sitting out by the campfire, and he's playing Sultan of Swing. I mean, so they were, they were all real life incidents that happened there. In the song, it was part of the fabric of those moments through many decades.
And
everybody, I think, everybody's got some song that is similar to this. And some of them will be Sultan of Swing, but we all have these soundtracks that follow us around through our lives, and it comes on the radio in the car, or your Sirius XM or whatever, and you're back there, one of those places in your life that you heard that song. I mean, the music transports us, in short.
One thing I was going to ask you, Karla, is that this to me, this book is full of virtuoso poetry. It really is just a tour de force for any young poet looking at this body of work. It's so incredible. The actual structure of how did you choose the lines at the end of the way you quote Sultans of Swing? How did you choose those lines in those orders with those verses? What were the factors of that?
It was the content. I mean, when I was working on the poem and, doing my scribbles in my journal, I had the lyrics in front of me. And I'm telling a piece of my life. Okay, I'm getting a divorce. What piece of the lyrics fits that particular instance of hearing the song? And I tried very hard to, like I said, cherry pick the particular lyric that applied to what was going on at the moment, whether it's being on the river, where I say, you feel all right when you hear that music sing. I just tried to mix and match the moment in my life with the piece of the lyric that seemed to weave the best together.
Yeah, it's there's so much. One thing that really brings it home for me is that with this is that how powerful his lyrics are. Even a simple phrase like "he doesn't want to make it cry, make it sing." These are really. And then he in the record he does kind of all these type of bends where he's kind of having a conversation with a musical conversation with himself. It's very. There's a lot of detail. There's a huge amount of detail in this poetry, and there's a huge amount of detail in Mark Knopfler's playing because he plays with a thumb, index, and middle finger. Doesn't use these two fingers, as we know, like in a kind of, call it claw hammer. And because it fundamentally he's pulling the string out, most guitarists with a plectrum would play it up and down.
Right.
But because he's plucking the string out, and he's almost got three plectrums really in with his hands, the way he plays with a lot of the. And it's very personal way of playing vibrato, which is where you play a note, and you just alter the pitch slightly. And he does like double bends as well, where he bends once, bends two together. And it's really interesting that because the inspiration for so much of his music is America. You know, a lot of the inspiration for that. And I was going to ask you, Karla, about the stanza. I think it's the fourth stanza in a trailer named Alice Elizabeth. Because that's brilliant. And you mentioned a cassette. Could you just talk about that?
Well, I mean, this is real life. My beloved husband, Roger, may he rest in peace, and I had a tiny 17-foot trailer that we lived in for months at a time, traipsing all over the North American continent. And there was one evening, Alice Elizabeth was the name of the trailer, and silly, right? But that was her name, and Roger had gotten this tiny. I mean, this was a small trailer, so he got this tiny little sound system that played CDs and cassettes, both. I mean, and it was only it was no big. It wasn't 2 feet across and 12 inches high, but it tucked in at the base of the little settee that was in this unit. And we could, I brought CDs with me and cassettes because it was a bunch of popped in. So, yeah, true story.
And I think one of the aspects of cassettes, when I see the word cassette in a poem, I think cassettes were really interesting because cassettes really gave people. You're generally driving when you had a cassette on it, pretty much. I think really. I mean, generally, driving or doing something around the house, and it encouraged people to listen to an album as a whole, rather than. I mean, I don't want to start knocking MP3s and stuff like that, but there is this opposite of like 3 seconds. Oh yeah, next one, because there's so many songs available. But on a cassette, it's I think it's a really immersive experience, and I do think that people take in the music a lot deeper because you're not tempted to go next one. Oh, I've got an email coming in. It's like the cassette is the if I had a long drive, and I had a couple of cassettes in the car, it's like, oh, this is fantastic. The cassette player almost becomes a good friend. Because it's just having, it creates a focus for music that we're not generally having, I think, in general life, because there's so many distractions now.
So many distractions and the technologies that have evolved. And the poem loosely tracks this history. I mean, we've gone from phonographs, hi-fis, to the cassette era. We can forget the beta. That was very short-lived, but cassettes, and then we went to CDs, and now we're in a place where, like you said, MP3s, Sirius XM, XM radio, and I mean, cars don't even come with CD players, much less cassette players anymore. I mean, you've got your you can subscribe to Sirius XM, or you can somehow connect your MP3 player, or I use my Android phone into the car system, So at least I have my playlists, which have a lot of Dire Straits on them, and tune in that way. But we've it's, I don't know, it's become, I don't know, it's, you said, we get easily distracted. The technology has really leapt so far ahead that we're trying to learn all new protocols for how do we hear the music we want to hear when we're driving down the road.
Yeah.
We've got 1,400 miles to get from Brockport to New York to North Fort Myers, Florida, in a car. Well, how do you listen to what you want to hear? And you've just got to learn all this new stuff and be flexible enough to learn it and then make it work for you, so that, if I want to hear Dire Straits, on the little car screen, and finally I'm there, and finally I get to listen to Dire Straits.
It's so interesting though, I think, because of the timeline of this such an enormous timeline on this beautiful poem. It's really, it almost to me, it almost sums up like 1987, 1999, 2007. I've never read such an autobiographical poem as this before. It's such a beautiful. How long did it take you to write, Karla?
This one actually came fairly quickly. Once I had the title, I mean, it just, which, I still chortle about, because of, I know the source of that title with the metric I use. I just started thinking about, the song, because this is Mark Knopfler's 61 Strat. I was listening to him playing. I had them playing the song over again with the lyrics there. And it just started, what were the touch points? And then, I drafted it I didn't quite know the years. I was looking for details. So I had the shape of the poem, let's put it that way. And I knew, I knew what the scenes were, and which lyrics to pick for those particular scenes. And then I sat and pulled, I let it sit for several weeks until I got back home, where all my journals are archived, and sat cross-legged in my archive room, searching through the journals, okay, 1978, when did I go to Fredonia? Oh, it was right at the end of the semester. So it was May, the song had just come out. And I did a lot of the research for this one, was primarily digging back into my old journals and finding the entries for the moment that I knew I wanted to capture.
I don't think I've asked you that. We've done 18 now. I don't think I've asked you this question, Karla, because I truly believe this is utter virtuosity, the way you write these poems. It's amazing. For young poets, people writing poetry, or young lyricists, people getting into this thinking, well, how do I do this? Would you have any advice for people getting into to writing poetry?
Well, I always start, because I've been asked this before, and my number one rule about writing poetry or writing anything, starting a novel or a short story, and I'm even non-creative nonfiction piece or a memoir piece, the first rule is just show up. Okay, that's it. You've got a journal, or you've got a piece of paper, your keyboard of your laptop. You just have to, the first thing you do is just show up and then start writing. And a lot of it won't happen. You'll write a lot, may write a lot of garbage, but the important thing is to show up and then put the pen on the page or the fingers on the keyboard and start putting things down. And out of that kind of free flow, word association maybe is happening. Something will start bubbling up. It is the most amazing thing. And it happens again and again and again. I mean, I've said this before to people too. I don't believe that there is such a thing as writer's block. You may have garbage at the end of an hour, but chances are in that garbage, there'll be a line or a phrase, and it'll just pop right out, and that's the nub of your poem, your new poem. But you can't do it. You can't do it if you don't sit down and show up, and then actually start stringing words together. They may be, like I said, just junk. And I save all my junk. I mean, I have everything, because I may have left. I just found a poem. Oh God, it was a few days ago. I was working on a poetry submission, and I was going through my computer searching a concept, and I found a poem I wrote it. It was like 2002. It's like 19 years ago. And I was like, wow, I don't remember that poem. And I read it over, and I go, but I was so far removed from it in time that I looked at it with fresh eyes, and I was able to take what was kind of a lame poem that I just scribbled, off the cuff, and work on it and find the gem that was really there waiting to be discovered. It's, I guess, like maybe a good metaphor is, someone working on a rock, okay, and they chip away, and lo and behold, there's the gem, the diamond that's been hidden in that rock, but you can't do it if you just don't sit down and start writing.
Yeah, I think that's...
They'll come, they'll be there.
I think that's the most difficult thing. Musically, it's the same as well. I sometimes think, I'm just gonna... You can't sit behind a guitar and just wait. I was watching an interview about inspiration, and you can't just wait for God to show up and just get your fingers and go, oh yeah. You can't do that. But a question I was going to ask you, kind of, with this poem, was there another song that you thought, another Dire Straits song or another Mark Knopfler song that you thought you might use instead of or as well as Sultans of Swing?
Ooh. No, I knew it was Sultans. I knew right away. But it would be really interesting, Paul, to look at another song. I mean, one of my all-time favorite Mark Knopfler tune is Romeo and Juliet. It would be really interesting to try and write a parallel poem that uses a different Knopfler tune and see what happens and where that leads me. Ooh, that's a great idea.
It's such a creative way of quoting Sultans of Swing, because I'm looking at this and you're talking about unreturned divorcee material, for any kind of stuff, and the band is blowing Dixie Double Four time. Is that about celebration of a divorcee?
Yes, it is. I mean, here I was. I mean, you could, divorce isn't easy, but I'm divorcee material. And I'm in a truncated way saying, I'm ready now for any kind of stuff. I've gotten through the anxiety and pain and sadness of that event. And so I'm open for any kind of stuff. So yeah, a band is blowing Dixie Double Four time. So, I'm coming out of it. I'm coming out of that despair and sadness to this liberated, where I'm hearing Dixie Double Four time, boys.
There is nothing more uplifting than seeing a Dixieland band. I mean, that is just to me, it's the ultimate celebration of anything. If a band is blowing Dixie Double Four time, it's just like there's just joy everywhere. I defy anybody to watch those bands and not just smile. Not just, it's beautiful. And another, I mean, this would make an amazing video. This poem, actually, with the different Hollybrook House. Where's Hollybrook House?
Okay, Hollybrook House is where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, really?
I live, yes, my home in Brockport, New York, 237 Hollybrook Road. It has a very distinctive persona, and it became almost immediately after moving in 2014. I live at Hollybrook House. It's a place. It's like something, I don't know, maybe this is kind of, overblown, but I don't just live at 237 Hollybrook Road. I live at Hollybrook House. Like, place has a name, so.
I love the line that you chose for that. Thank you, good night, now it's time to go home. That I didn't realize that was the name of your house. That's such a beautiful way of doing that. It's if you were going to use another Mark Knopfler or Dire Straits in this, is there a tune that comes to mind you might possibly use?
Well, it might be interesting to play around with Tunnel of Love, which has, is another one of Mark's real story poems about a guy who's one of an operator at a carnival, running one of the rides, the Tunnel of Love ride. So that might be an interesting one to play with, to see if there are parallels in that particular lyric that could be used.
I think I see a real parallel between Mark Knopfler's approach to writing and your writing, because this is so cinematic. Your poem, I think, is so cinematic. I can look at this and I could see this could be this could be a film, a feature film. The whole thing of the story, because of such a long time, 78 to 2020, and the whole it could be a play or something like that, because it's so cinematic. When you're approaching poems, Karla, is there an element of sometimes you might want something very, very intimate and very, very like close by, and then this almost cinematic way that you're painting with words in Hollybrook House? I'm just picturing this beautiful house surrounded by trees and things like that, and the trailer.
Right.
Is there an element of that, do you think, in your, were you actually seeing pictures of what you were writing about?
Oh yeah, but I have a very vivid imagination. I can close my eyes and put myself somewhere pretty clearly. Whether it's Hollybrook House or the little trailer, or as the in the last stanza, my condo land, sitting in my condo, and I can close my eyes and be there and see things in extraordinary detail, and it's just a gift. It's not anything to do with genius. It's a gift that I was given to be able to be that visually driven. I've also spent quite many years doing a lot of photography, which teaches you and reinforces the whole idea of that's essential in poetry, of the significant detail. And I think, once you hit on those, significant details, then they start opening up. It's like the significant detail is the pearl in the middle of an oyster, and you open the oyster and there's the pearl, but then there's the whole surround of the oyster itself and that home that pearl lives in. And that's the use of significant details. What details are you going to plug in? And sometimes poems start that way. I may have an idea for something. Oh, I want to, I mentioned probably, many nature poems and collections that deal with nature. And what was that detail that then from which, the poem opened up, the oyster opened up into a poem. What's the detail I'm pegging? And I'll sometimes just, jot lists of details And which detail do I want to or how do I want to get from this detail to this detail to this detail? I mean, the dates are important details. The location. Am I in the trailer? I'm on the Colorado River in a boat? Am I on a college campus? Those little, and those details just start blossoming into a picture. So each of these is really thinking of photography. Each of these is a photograph. And then you string enough photographs together, and you've got what you refer to, your metaphor of a film.
I mean, and also
with the soundtrack.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. It's a great thing that you've done, because you've got 6 stanzas, and Sultans of Swing has 6 verses, which is really.
I've never drawn that parallel. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. I mean, this would.
Who knows? Maybe that was subliminally at work.
Well, I think that the whole aspect is for me, this kind of sums up the whole book, because you just can't, once you read, you can't stop till you get to the end. There's so much in there, and it's so conversational as well. I mean, this would make a great song. I haven't actually rehearsed this as usual, but I mean, I'll use the I'll set it to So Far Away From Me. And see if I can kind of fit the words in, because it's so conversational. I've not. This is. Yeah. Let me get that time. Tiny bit. Okay. 1978, I spent a stone weekend in sunny Fredonia. When I first heard it, returned 4 years on. In sunny Fredonia, some eager younger stuff, a crowd of boys cheering, they're fooling around in the corner. In sunny Fredonia, you can kind of see what that with kind of conversational lyrics that Mark Knopfler, he would do it much better than that. It'd fit into the words, but it's something that is so conversational about that, and I think that's another aspect that I picked up with your work, is that, especially because very recently we did a podcast together on about this book and the poetry, and which and your approach to poetry, and it's just like, especially with people hearing you recite these poems on this series of podcasts, it's such a personal thing. It's almost like a sort of it's almost like having an MP3 player in your head, but you can hear, you can hear this voice. When I read the poems, I can hear your voice reading them to me, which is such a beautiful thing, because Jason Smith said it on our Tuesday Zoom group. It's so nice to hear poets speak, perform their own works, and I think it would make an amazing live show. Actually, I think it would be fascinating to set some of these to music and have you.
Well, we'll work.
I think it'd be great, to
we'll work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, a couple things. What you were just talking about. I mean, I just lost my train of thought. But it's an amazing process, and poetry to travel around. I mean, people didn't have books, and they didn't have printouts of poems. It was all in the bard's head, and they would go from town to town, and they had dozens of poems in their heads, and some of them very, very long poems, and that's how poetry was first done. And it's only really since people, yeah, we learned how to write, and we wrote things down, and then, eventually, Gutenberg invented the press, and now we have computers. So poetry is an oral tradition. So even when I'm reading a book, I'll read the poem, on the page in the book, and then I'll read it again out loud. I can't hear the poet speaking, but I can hear my own voice trying, and it just blossoms and comes to life, because sonics, the sounds that are in a poem are so important, and the rhythms. So yeah, to have a poem just rest on a page, yeah, it's wonderful. You can start dissecting it, and you can make little marginal notes and underline words or phrases, circle phrases that you like. But reading it aloud really is what, poems should be read aloud. And we can hear the full wonder of what a poem is, because it's more than just the words; it's the sound of the words.
Well, there's something just occurred to me. For sure. There's something just occurred to me, kind of. There's a real parallel here. The fact that you've quoted Sultans of Swing at the end of the stanza. Now, it's just occurred to me, but Sultans of Swing, at the end of every verse, Mark Knopfler does just this type of thing. All these little fills. Yeah. That type of thing. And he's kind of quoting other classic. He's quoting, not directly, but he's quoting Chet Atkins, some Chuck Berry for sure. A lot of Merle Haggard, a lot of the folky type of things, and a lot of this country type of thing. And he's also quoting Bach when he does this.
Oh yeah.
And it's really interesting how you've kind of got that feeling of quoting something classic after the stanza, almost as when he puts his guitar fill in, he's quoting. Well, he's not quoting directly, but he's quoting classic country guitarists or musicians, not just guitarists. And that's a beautiful. I think that's the whole thing with the whole book. You've just captured so beautifully the feeling of what the artist is about, and
thank you.
Bringing something classic yet different to the I mean, every guitarist in the world has played that Chuck Berry type of blues type, but on Walk of Life he's doing that. He really makes it his own. I mean, and that is the really tricky part of playing music, is that it's all been heard before. How are you going to retell it? And he seems to do that every time so beautifully. It's brilliant. And this poem, like I say, it's and the title is worth the admission price alone, Karla. I think the metric I use is 61 Strat. It really is. I mean, I could see that on the back of a T-shirt, because it's like there's a whole film in just the title. I think it's amazing. It's brilliant. Thank you so much, Karla, for that. It's been such a blast, and thank you so much for these past 18. But we should do some more in the future. I know it's a good way to.
Let's try. I mean, I thank you, Paul. I mean, this has been such a wonderful journey through these 18 podcasts, and I certainly I thank all those folks who have tuned in. They're on there on YouTube to discover if you haven't yet. And I should say thank you to the man who isn't in this broadcast. And his name is Ken Kelball, and he is the publisher who will be bringing My Body, the Guitar to life in early December. I mean, I didn't know when I started this, of course, that I would have a publisher. We never know. But this one came along. It was one of those rare instances where a publisher came to me and said, I want to do a Karla book. Let's plot, 2 years or 18 months in advance for, December 2021. And I've never had the opportunity, to be invited to do a book. And he goes, which one do you want to do? And I said, oh, yeah, I want to do My Body, the Guitar. I mean, I'd started it. So it's been a rare event. And I really, I honor him for trusting me, because with a book that was, maybe 20 poems long, and being willing to say, yeah, I'll do that book. And then this book has since come into being. And I appreciate that so much. And it's a small press, and he picks his writers. There's no, he's not getting manuscripts in from 100 different poets. He approaches the poet and said, I want to do you. So I am incredibly honored that Ken Kilball and his Before Your Quiet Eyes holograph series press is doing this book. Just happens to be down the road for me, which is also nice. We can actually meet in person to do production. We just had a production meeting last week, so it's a rare treat, as you are.
Great. Well, thank you, Karla. But thank you so much. And let's talk again soon. We could do some podcasts about when I write some music for your poems.
Okay. To be continued.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karla. Thank you so much for being brilliant. And we look forward to the book. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank everybody.